Hello everyone, welcome to another beer review. Now these beers are a wee bit kind of by accident because I just came across them by accident. So today we're actually going to do a bitter ale. Well, hopefully it will be a bitter ale. Unfortunately I've done bitters in the past, and one of the major kind of criteria of a bitter is to maybe have a bit of bitterness, you know. Doesn't have to be a huge amount, but some would be nice. Unfortunately, I've had bitters that taste, well, they just taste like amber ales really. There's nothing at the back end at all, you know. It's a gay man's disappointment when there's nothing at the back end. As they say, well, I presume they say that. I'm sure it's basically if you turn up and there's not much to kind of attack, then it's a disappointment for everybody in these type of scenarios. But anyway, it's what we're doing is Higsons bitter ale, 3.8%, 500ml bottle. Can't remember what it cost. I think it was £1.49, between £1.49 and £1.79. Got it in Home Bar. Was it Home Bargains? I can't remember. One of these places, either Home Bargains or Shoplifter's Paradise. One of these two. Yeah, you know, it's Higsons is basically, I think they're in Liverpool, is where Higsons from. Don't really know that much about them. It says Higsons bitter is brewed with the finest English malts and choice fuggles. Of course it's going to be the finest English malts. You're going to be saying, well, we've made a half-ass effort in this beer, so yeah, it's made with some right ropey fucking malt came in this morning, that type of stuff. We thought, we'll do a better with that. It'd be lovely. You know, it's always the finest. It's never like, well, it's kind of ropey or, well, decidedly average, and it's a bit of a strange smell off it. You know, it's amazing, isn't it? It's always a wonderful stuff, and it's the cases of they're all using such a, you know, the exceptional and finest kind of ingredients. Why is there so many piss beers then? You know, is that down to the brewers being shit, you know? Oh no, not the brewers, no, we have vision and clarity. Oh, we're so progressive, you know, and we use the finest ingredients, so I don't know what went wrong, you know? Yeah. So, giving a distinctive and assertive hop character balanced with a fruity palate and a malty finish to this medium-bodied ale. Colour is 15 EBCs and the IBU is 30. There you go. Kinky pinky. Oh, lovely. So yeah, so shall we crack into this? There's a glass there. We're in a different kind of environment and that type of stuff, you know. So, farted in the other room and, oh Jesus. Oh, I couldn't stomach it, so I thought, right, I'll go to a different room and just let it dissipate. No, I just thought I'd try a different place just to kind of, you know, perplex you and kind of catch you out. So we're still in Scotland, but we're just in a different place. We're just back, I'm not that long back from I'm worried about this one because I bought 2 of these bottles because I actually bought a keg of this stuff as well. Is it Home Bargains or Shoplifter's Paradise or the Dirty Touchy Shop, whatever, you know what I mean? I don't know what they are. They're all kind of dodgy and freaky anyway and that type of stuff. You wouldn't turn your back on half of the fucking customers, all the bloody stuff, you know what I mean? Because they'll be in there and after you and doing things and not things and oof. But anyway, when I was putting on the conveyor belt, you know, the cashier's kind of desk, one fell over and then the guy who was in front of me went to catch it and then he was fucking juggling with the fucking thing and he's like, maybe open that one last. Well, that's a good one, but by the time I get home, which one's fucking which? You fucking numbnut. And there you go. This is what you're dealing with. Try to help and made the fucking things worse, by the way. You might as well say, well, see, look over there. That's fine, you know what I mean? Fucking freaky bastard. Anyway. Well, it might not be that one, but it was make some funny noises. Yeah, so we were at the Peterborough Beer Festival at the weekend. It wasn't too bad. I tended to kind of go for beers that I kind of already know and know they're actually not bad beers. So the beers that I kind of chose were okay, not too bad, quite good. the kind of ones that were chosen that we don't really know much about, well, they didn't work out so good. They weren't so bad. They weren't really awful or things like that, like the year before, but there was a slight kind of distinct drop in quality, but they were okay. You know what I mean? They were all right to try for the first time, but maybe not to go back for a second one. You know what I mean? That type of thing. But the ones that I did go for, 3 Acres ESB, which is down near Ucklefield, if I remember rightly. That's down that way, down the centre of Sussex area, just at the edge of Sussex, before it goes into Kent. And if I remember rightly, it's quite near Tunbridge Wells, you know, Tunbridge, down that way, Uckfield. So that was quite nice. It was a nice kind of little extra special best, which is what their ESB stands for, and that was quite nice, to the point as we actually had 2 classes of that. We actually went back to get another one later on because John actually enjoyed it and wanted another one. But we tried did Old Peculiar. That was a safe bet for me, you know, because I actually quite like, but it was a regular cask Old Peculiar, and I quite like Old Peculiar, so that was an easy one. I was kind of cheating on that one. But I did also go for the Orkney Ale, the kind of high strength one, which is a Skull Splitter. I think it's about 8.5. It's between 8.5 or 8.9%. I can't quite remember. Bit of a strange one though, because they would only sell that in half pints, because obviously, you know, anything 8% or above, you just couldn't cope with it. You know, let's just be anarchy. Oh Jesus, it's like World War fucking 3 if you basically sold you a pint of that stuff. It's a world coming to, for fuck's sake, you know what I mean? And that's why you don't get any homeless or basically tramps in these places and that, because you're not going to give me a full pint of the mad juice. I'm no coming. I'm no sneaking in, you know, that type of thing. So they're quite right. So, ta-ta! Looks lovely. Yeah. What does it smell of? Not so much hops. A bit malty and a bit more grainy. Bit kind of slightly more grainy. So yeah, you're getting that kind of slightly bready, kind of bran flake kind of aromas. Not really much malt and nothing really standing out. You know, you're getting maybe a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of syrup, but again, nothing like kind of a caramel or toffee or anything. Nothing, and nothing really hoppy wise. Shall we try? This is a Sunday video, so there's no whiskey to back it up. So if it's piss, it's piss. But it was a surprise. I thought, well, why not? I wasn't planning to do it. And we've got a few Higsons ones as well. I've got a brown ale coming up as well for next Sunday. And I've got the bottle one. I've got another bottle one, and I'm going to compare it to the keg just to see what it's like compared to the keg, and that gives you a better idea. Because the keg was only $12.99, but it was the last one in the shop, so maybe that's why it was $12.99. But there we go. Anybody want to buy finally a keg of Higsons Best Bitter for £10? Look! It's light. It's light in the body. It's kind of on the lighter end of the malt. I would say it's sessionable, but yeah, it's quite grainy at the back end. There's a bit of bitterness and a little bit of hops, but the main flavour that's kind of lingering is a slightly kind of grain based kind of, you know, bran flakes. You know, if you eat dry bran flakes out the box, it's like that, and it smells like, you know, you put your nose into that, it's like it's got that kind of bran flake kind of cereal smell, and that kind of taste if you're basically just eating them just directly from the box. Wife is now back. She was supposed to be back last Sunday and managed to get back yesterday. Well, they arrived in at 2 o'clock in the morning. By the time we got back home from the bloody airport and everything else, and I got to my bed, fucking 4 o'clock in the morning, and then I had to be up for a bloody 9 o'clock bloody conference call with a load of Austrians. Jesus, I'm telling you, I'm like a half-shot knife now, by the way. So she brought me that back from Russia via Greece, because they couldn't get across the border from Belarus into Lithuania, because there's a lot of silly buggery going on and that type of stuff. So it's like an effing disaster, and you're talking about 18 plus hours waiting there to try and get across borders and things like that on buses, and it's just daft. It really is nuts. So she just basically went down to Minsk, realised it was a fucking disaster, managed to kind of, well, they couldn't even get train tickets to get back to Moscow. She actually had to persuade the ticket office to actually book them into disabled accommodation, and that's the only way they could actually get back to Moscow that night. So they managed to get back to Moscow, and then eventually they booked a flight so they could go via Moscow, Istanbul, Athens, Edinburgh. So they left on the Wednesday, and they got back on the Friday at 2 o'clock in the morning. So it was still a bloody saga and a hell of a journey to get here, you know, even by flying it. So it's just crazy right now, it really is. There's maybe a slightly metallic feel to the back end of this as well. I'll be honest, I mean, the bitterness isn't too bad, you know, but it's not a bitterness at the back of the mouth. It's a slight bitterness in the kind of lingering tones after you swallowed, which I would like the bitterness to come in a bit earlier than that, you know, while I've still got fluid in my mouth. There you go. Well, I like a bit of fluid in the mouth before we taste it. I don't know if these are euphemisms, innuendos, or a mixture of both, you know. How much truth is in the talk? That's what they say. I'm getting more acclimatised to it, so some of the kind of slightly wackier flavours are maybe kind of dying down now. It's okay. It's not the best beer. It feels it's slightly on the kind of lighter and maybe slightly on the cheaper side, which I'm not going to be too harsh from it, because at the end of the day the prices were on the cheaper side anyway, let's be totally honest. And unless you're either very lucky, which of course I'm not, or you're completely detracted from fucking reality, and you seem to think, well, if I spend £1 I really should be getting a £5 quality fucking beer, because at the end of the day I'm special and I fucking deserve it, you know. Which in reality, if you spend basically, you know, £1 on a beer, then there's a good chance it will probably taste roughly like a £1 beer. If you're lucky, it could even probably taste worse than that, you know what I mean? So yeah. So for the price, I think it's round about the kind of £1.50 kind of markish. It's okay. It's not brilliant, but it's kind of more, you're getting what you paid for. You know, it's maybe not such a bargain, but it's in line with kind of reality. So you get, excuse me, can't help that. Now, what she did do is she had to bring them back as kind of little miniatures, but she brought me back some Scotch whisky from Russia that's supposedly Scotch whisky and bourbon whisky and all these type of places, but it seems to be Russian own make, so it'll be interesting to see what they taste. They're kind of obviously marketing them as Scotch whisky and American bourbon and all this, but obviously they're not. They're actually produced in Russia, so it'll be interesting to see what they taste like. So look out for them coming up in future Wednesday videos to try, and you know, so I could actually end up having 2 whiskies and a beer. So the beer's a bit duck and dodgy, and one of the whiskies could be a bit dodgy, so I've also got another whiskey backup, because in case the beer and the whiskey is dodgy and then I need something to kind of make me feel better and deserving. So yeah, that's something to get. It's for a beer on the lighter end. The flavours are slightly a bit all over the place in this beer, and the thing that kind of stands out for me is it's how would you say? Some of the flavours are kind of coming up where you don't really expect them to, and some of the flavours you've got there just, well, do they really need to be there? You know, it's a kind of, it's like a kind of oddity and a confusion in a glass to a certain degree. But like I say, it's not the worst. I'm getting more acclimatised to it. It's drinkable. I've had a hell of a lot better, absolutely. But I've also had a hell of a lot worse. And I would say that, yeah, I'm quite a bit down the flavours, but It starts off with, even at the front of the mouth, the grain seems to be a more predominant flavour to the malt. There's a bit of sweetness there, there's a bit of malt, but again it's just more of a kind of generic kind of syrupiness rather than anything else. The grain seems to be the predominant flavour at the front end. Again, that kind of slightly bran flake kind of flavour. Moves on to the mid-tongue. Around about the middle of the mid-tongue, you start kind of picking up little hints of hops and just little light hints of bitterness and that. But again, you're also getting quite strong bran flake flavours. The malt doesn't really kind of improve, maybe slightly goes down a little bit, which again just kind of draws the body into a more kind of lighter format. And again, the sweetness is kind of not particularly huge, which is fine. I don't see that as a problem, but it's kind of lacking the body. And the hops are a bit lighter at that point in the kind of mid-tongue. But again, the more predominant flavour is kind of slightly kind of grainy, bran flaky kind of flavour. And because everything else has got a little bit lighter in the mid-tongue, it starts to stand out even more, especially towards the back of the mid-tongue, where it really kind of hits its peak and becomes its most kind of intensive. And it's not the nice, I'm not saying it's a bad flavour, but it's not the nicest flavour, and it tends to be slightly overpowering everything else. Again, all the kind of flavours kind of fairly dissipate quite quickly. It's a fairly clean finish. I mean, you don't really get much bitterness at the back end, you get a little bit, but what you do once you've swallowed, you start getting kind of little kind of repeats of bitterness coming back at you in the mouth. Which tends to give the impression you're getting more of a bitterness after you swallowed, which for me isn't the best, because it feels like more, it's like kind of a, like a bad burp basically, you know. And yeah, I mean, you usually expect to have the flavour, you know, before you swallow, and then maybe lingering afterwards, whereas you're not really getting the same intensity of flavour when you swallow, and then it just starts to kind of appear from nowhere after you've kind of swallowed, and you're thinking, not the most pleasant delivery, you know, of flavour within beers. But yeah, I'm just not a big fan of that kind of grainy flavour. It's just a bit too much. For me, it's maybe a little bit too light on the body and especially on the malt. And yeah, the hops, it just feels like they've put in a lot of poor quality hops, you know, cheap hops. And then what's happened is that the hops haven't really taken hold as a main flavour in the beer recipe during fermentation and conditioning. But as obviously there's enough hop oil in there to basically give you a kind of lingering aftertaste after you've swallowed it. So it's really the oil kind of coming back on you, but the oil isn't of good enough quality in the hops to kind of deliver a more sustained flavour actually in the beer, because it can't really compete with other flavours. But once everything's kind of swallowed and it's by itself, there's enough in the hop oil to give you a bit more bitterness again after you've swallowed, because there's nothing really there left to compete with it. So it's like more of really of an aftertaste kind of coming back at you. So yeah, it doesn't strike me it's made with the best quality ingredients, I'll be totally honest. But like I said, the price kind of covers that. So what would I give this out of 10? There's a question. It's not really the best, and I would say it's probably slightly below average. It's drinkable. If I was in a pub and that's all they had as an ale, and all the rest is your macro shitty mainstream lagers and shitty Guinness, then I'd probably drink a couple of these. But I would probably end up going into the whiskey fairly kind of quick. I don't think I could probably suffer any more than 2 of these. That's the reality. Hopefully the keg's going to be better. I'm kind of questioning it. I'm kind of thinking about that keg and bottle review, you know, the kind of comparison. That could turn out to be a Wednesday video. Shit. So yeah, out of 10, what would I give it? I'd think 4.5. Between 4.5 is probably a more honest kind of scoring. It doesn't deserve any more. Yeah, I'll give it a 4.5. I'll get the benefit of the doubt because the price is quite low as well. So I'll give it 4.5. I would say it's below average. There's a lot better out of there, and I would recommend that if you can afford to spend a little bit more money, then do so and get a better product from another beer. It would be the best advice I could give. But it's okay. It's 3.8%, 500ml bottle. It's roughly around about the £1.49 kind of thing. It was fairly cheap. I think it was Home Bargains, or I can't even remember what it was. I actually didn't even want to go in to get beer. The wife dragged me in because one of her plants is dying, so she wanted to get kind of compost to try and see if she could revive it. And then next minute I'm walking out with a bag full of bottles and a 5-litre keg. Don't know how that happened. Love, I don't know. Somebody must have came up behind me and got me with, you know, into half Nelson or something like that, and just kind of forced me to buy it. But yeah, so yeah, 4.5 out of 10. If you're curious, then try it. If you're into good bitters like me, then maybe give it a miss. So I would. But anyway, thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye for now.